discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Checkity 1, 2. Hey, we are live. Welcome to Health or High Water podcast. You're here with, of course, Brett and Mr. Trip Parks.
Bonjour.
Hello, and Michelle is a guest joining us today. Michelle, how you doing?
I am fantastic, and it's lovely to be here in person with you all. I get so used to doing these virtually, so it's fun to be in a room with people.
So much better.
Yeah.
So much better. Trip and I, and you do Riverside FM a lot, right? Or
Well,
sometimes?
that is what my podcast producer uses. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm really a high maintenance podcaster. I don't want to do anything except for talk. So I hire people to do all the hard stuff.
Yes. What, like you mean like the producing or the
Yeah.
sound check stuff or like everything?
All of the above.
Okay. Do you do video editing?
I don't edit it. I don't do anything but show up and talk.
That sounds like the best ever. So thanks for joining us. We're going to get into always health and wellness, better minds, better bodies, better beings. You're doing some exciting stuff. Also, there's going to be some cool crossover. You were originally a personal trainer, and I'm excited. We're going to get into that journey with the listeners. They always love our personal training, discussions because there's so much that it surrounds. So yeah, you're in for a treat today, you guys. Trip, what's happening? Give us any news, rundowns, exciting things. I do have one thing I'll add after you.
In the news, stuff happened. The end.
Okay,
Quick
that
news.
means no news happening. I'm going to shout out again. I think I did a few podcasts ago, Catherine Ames, which I feel like we've shouted out her probably every podcast through the game, is mental health and performance. And we are working on a workshop together that we're going to announce soon. So excited about that. It's going to be a camp for baseball originally and softball, and then with building into mental performance. So we're hoping for May or June we're going to aim for. So we'll announce that probably in the next couple of weeks on the dates and the specifics. But let's rock and roll.
I have something to say on that.
Go ahead.
I was a competitive gymnast growing up, and we had summer camp all the time. There was nothing that addressed the mental aspect of it. Back in the day. I'm kind of old, so I love that has really become way more mainstream. In fact, when I went to grad school, that's what I was going to be, was a sports psychologist.
That's awesome.
Little did I know you had to get a PhD in psychology and then specialize. I thought, I can just go be a sports psychologist with my master's in kinesiology. I'm like, oh no, that's not how that works.
That's super. That's kind of crazy too. Like, the psychology, like I get that there's like bodies that should govern particular things, like, hey, you need to know these type. But to be a sports psychologist, like if you've been successful, like a D1 athlete, and you understand it, I don't think you need a PhD to like really help certain.
Well, and I think these days you don't, right?
Right.
Mind you, this was 9,000 years ago when I was in grad school.
Okay. It's super exciting. So she's been on the podcast, on our podcast, and just the sweetest woman ever, like super kind. And she's a licensed therapist, and she came up with the company Through the Game. And it's all about developing the mindset. Now, she usually works with like college and high school, so we're kind of getting into the younger phase, which will be interesting. But even like me as, an instructor, it's all mindset. Everything is how you're approaching what we're doing. We had a podcast with Lance Vieta, the head coach, 2 days ago, the head coach of Littleton High School, about why we're using sports in general, right? Like, yes, we want to win, and it's important, but we're using this to develop people.
Yeah, I think all the time about the skills that I learned in the gym on the mat that have nothing to do with gymnastics and that have carried me through life. I've written a bunch of blogs on, lessons from a leotard.
I love it.
That literally are, all those things were created and developed and honed because of my time in the gym and because of my coaches and how they worked together, worked with each of us individually, sometimes worked against each other to, kind of good cop, bad cop kind of thing, and really trying to figure out how to tap into each of our individual potential as a competitive gymnast. It's not a team sport.
Right.
And you have all different skills and all different levels of desire for being in the gym and all different levels of grit and determination. And it's up to them as coaches to identify all of that and then do what they can to tap into how we're going to get the best and most out of this gymnast that we can.
Yeah. I want to give our listeners too a little bit more background about you. So you have a master's in kinesiology, and you got that here in Colorado?
Yes, CU Boulder, my master's in kinesiology. I have my undergraduate degrees from University of Hawaii in psychology and nutrition.
Okay, and then you got the psych and the nutrition. Let's give why did you, were those things you were interested in, like the psych and the nutrition, or you felt like, hey, I should add this as part of that? How?
No, it was all by accident.
Okay.
When I was 8, my parents took us to Hawaii for the first time for vacation, and as an 8-year-old, I felt like I was home. And I thought, oh, this is where I belong. And of course, college is kind of the first opportunity to really go. And I was going to go for hotel restaurant management. I was going to be in the tourism industry because I wanted to live in Hawaii forever because it was amazing and glamorous, and this is what I want to do. And first semester, I thought, this is horrific. This is the worst industry ever. I'd never want to have anything to do with this industry. I guess I'll turn to psychology.
Oh, okay.
So it really was all by accident. However, I have always been very curious and interested in human behavior, and the nutrition piece was big. That was actually a huge struggle for me as a competitive gymnast growing up. Lots of issues with food and around food and figuring out food. And so I thought, well, let me, actually learn about it. And then, turns out everything we learned was totally wrong. But that's all part of the journey. And so, after I got my undergraduate degrees, I thought, okay, now what? What do you do with this,
Sure.
right? And I really did want to work with athletes, and really in the space of working with athletes with eating disorders. And so as I apply to grad schools and I see all these, different types of opportunities, I saw that CU had a sports psychology department within the kinesiology major. And it was a little bit of a switch and bait and switch. It really was sold as, oh yeah, you'll get to interact with the athletes. No, not at all. 100% applied, which I was a little salty about, but once you're in a grad program, you just kind of go with it. And it was there that I really got into, totally by accident, personal training. I was working at the front desk of a little gym out in Gun Barrel, and there was a trainer. And again, this is a long time ago, before training was a thing. But there was a trainer there, and she was going to have a baby. She said, you should get certified. I think you'd love it. Take my clients while I'm gone. And I did. And as soon as I started doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. It's everything I love. So that's really how it began. I was an independent contractor at the gym, and, I had to come up with a business name. And I thought, well, what am I doing? I'm obviously helping people build better bodies, but a lot of what I was doing too was just talking to my clients and learning about them and talking about their day, or, the thing they're doing over the weekend, or the goals that they're trying to reach, and how the things you're doing over the weekend are not going to help you reach those goals. And, really kind of digging into more of the psychology of it, and realize that so much of this is also about building better minds. And so that's where the Better Minds, Better Bodies, Better Beings, Better Human Beings, Better Beings business name came from.
And you've had that name this entire time?
Yeah, 26 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of a genius. It's true. It's true.
And incredibly humble as well. That's awesome. That's so, I'm assuming this was, sometime, like you said, this was before training became popularized.
This is 1997.
Yeah.
Right, when Hollywood stars and really rich people had trainers, and that's it.
That was it.
In fact, so growing up in small town Wisconsin, when I told my parents what I was going to do, my mom said, "Well, honey, if after a few months you have to get a real job, that's okay." Right? Except
you still hear that, people.
Right?
I still have oh, you got a real job. I'm like, what?
Well, and but I get it, because the thought that people are going to pay you to make them exercise, like that back then, that made no sense, especially coming from a small town in Wisconsin. Like
What town?
Winneconne.
Winneconne. Where is that?
It's about 12 miles outside of Oshkosh.
Oh, north of Oshkosh? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I grew up in Waukesha.
Oh,
So I
okay.
know-
So I actually lived in Poygan, which is in between Omro and
Right
Winneconne.
on. Yep. Mhm.
Wow, we're kind of neighbors.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's wild.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one town I haven't been to. I've been to most towns in Wisconsin.
Well, there's too many small towns to count. So.
Yeah, once you get up past Oshkosh and Appleton, then it's just it's nothing. That's okay. So you were into personal training. This is fun too because I can tell you're excited about personal training, and that was a passion of yours, and mine too. I feel like I've talked to a lot of personal trainers, and I've heard people say, you went to get a real job, or you're paying someone to exercise, paying someone to count reps for you. This is an interesting thing to talk about because that's what it looks like from the outside, right?
100%.
It looks from the outside. If you don't know, if you've never been a personal trainer, you don't have a personal trainer, you're like, oh, they're counting reps. They're counting sets. But personal training, people have heard me talk, so I'm done talking. But tell not only the listeners, but us, get us an in-depth, what is personal training really?
I mean, I think it can be so many different things to so many different people. It's really whatever that particular client needs, and not every client is looking for the same thing. I actually remember very early on, I had another member of that gym come up to me and ask me how I could continue to train this particular client because, they're clearly not making any progress. And I said, well, that's a really interesting comment. Do you even actually know what her goals are? Of course he doesn't. He has no idea why she's in there. Mm-hmm. It turned out she was in there because she had the only opportunity to get one individual time for herself to spend on herself. Mm-hmm. So for her, it was self-care. Right? It was the ability to get away from the kids, to have no commitments to the job, to truly just do something for herself, and to have somebody who she can bat ideas around with and talk to, and in the process, also build a stronger body. Mm-hmm. And, a strong body to one person is very different from a strong body to somebody else. So I really think it's any and everything. It's whatever that client needs. That's why it's called personal training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we see that a lot, and over the years, let's say you have a client for several years at a time, you're right. They don't know the particular goals. So they may say this person's only lost 7 pounds over the course of a year. Your program is not working, but maybe they've learned to balance their life better. Maybe all their weights have gone up. Maybe their flexibility has increased. Maybe their blood pressure has been lowered. So there's all these metrics. Tripp and I always talk about this. Maybe weight loss isn't exactly this person's so if they're down 7 pounds, add that 5 years. Now they're down 35. So yeah, it's a great point about personal training.
But I think that's also part of the problem with the fitness industry is everyone assumes it's about weight loss. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge narrative that I think we really need to start changing because there is so much more to being physically fit and working out than your weight. Mm-hmm. Right? It's actually about being physically fit, reducing your risk for chronic disease, having more energy to get through your day, feeling confident that you have the strength to go do what you want to do. It's about having the stamina to haul your ass down one length of DIA because you have a super tight connection and you'd like to make your flight, right? It's literally training to live your life. Mm-hmm. And I think too often we do focus on, it must be all about weight. And I know for a lot of people it is, and yet there's all these other things that we get from it that I think go very underappreciated because they might not be visibly obvious to someone.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, too, to add to that, when you lose weight, what weight? Are you losing muscle? Are you losing fat? What does your body composition look like? So that's one thing that we talk to people come in, it's like, hey, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, 30 pounds of what? Right? Oh, I just want to lose 30 pounds. Like, well, we want to make sure that you're losing fat, not lean mass to eat the fat, right? So it's just interesting when people come in like, I want to lose 30 pounds. Like, well,
Yeah. I've had people many times that I want to lose this last 7 pounds or 10 pounds and 15 pounds, and And, when somebody tells you that, it's 100% a mental thing. It's like people want to feel better. They don't necessarily want to look better. They want to feel better about how they look, right? Because body dysmorphia is a real thing. Look at any bodybuilder and they obsess over, my left bicep is different size than my right. And I'm like, okay, so you're taking, and you're not appreciating just what amazing shape you're in, and you're comparing yourself. And so really, I think that's the ultimate goal. People coming in is like, people want to feel good about how they look. You come in, you lift weights, and if you're capable, you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure men go through this too, but women, we are conditioned to value our worth based on the number on the scale. And society contributes to that. There's no doubt about it. I actually had a training client many, many years ago who, same thing, came in and wanted to lose weight. And I explained to her, lifting weights and building muscle is going to help you facilitate fat loss. So let me ask this question. Do you want to lose weight or do you want to wear smaller size pants? And she said, well, both. I said, okay, I think we can accomplish that. But if you could only pick one? Well, she said, well, of course, I want to wear smaller size pants. Okay, cool. So we go through and she does all the stuff and she's making progress and her pant size is going down. The scale went up by 1 pound. She quit. She quit because as much as she said, no, I really just want, a smaller size pants. She tied her self-worth and her success to the number on the scale. And because it was bigger, then this doesn't work is actually what she said.
Yeah. I mean, we have a society kind of like a perception problem too about like instant gratification with Uber Eats and, everything now that we've developed is like a get now sort of thing.
It's a convenience factor, right?
Yeah. And health is the exact opposite. It's not about like, you can step on the scale. I mean, Tripp is one of the most data-driven people in the industry. I mean, he's very science-driven, but having said that, it's just a way to the people doing the journey shouldn't even care about those numbers. We should care about those. Those are our numbers to worry about. That's how we modulate things. So, that was a cool little deep dive there. So, okay, so you got your master's degree. You went and learned a ton about psychology and nutrition. You were in Hawaii. You personal trained, you loved it, you fell in love with it. What happened next? How did this business start? Where did it go from there?
Yeah, so that's how the business started, was at this little gym. At the time, it was called Synergy. And I want to give a shout out to Kathy Green. She was the owner of that gym and really so far ahead of the times when I look back at it now. She was very much a pioneer in women's fitness in this little town. Nobody knew her except for us. She wasn't like a Jane Fonda, right? But she was somebody who very much encouraged women to lift weights. And even me, in my day, I was the cardio queen. I bought into that, right? Got to burn calories, burn your calories, do your cardio, burn your calories. This is what you do. And I did a little bit of weight training because as a gymnast, we strength trained, but it was not super dedicated. And, she challenged me. So let me give a little more backstory so people can really understand where I came from. Gymnast, awesome. Definitely contributed to a very unhealthy relationship with food. And when I decided to quit gymnastics, October 18th, 1989,
Ooh.
I wrote a note
Dang.
to my coach and put it on her car windshield and yep, that's how I quit.
The pretext.
Yep.
The pretext.
Whoa.
And I then went to every Dairy Queen in Oshkosh. And we had 3 of them at the time. And I ordered the biggest blizzard you could find at each one. Peanut butter crunch with extra peanut butter. And I ate one on the way to the next, got a next one, ate that on the third, got a third one.
Wow.
And I was so happy.
Wow.
I was free. I didn't have to get on a scale for anybody or get in a leotard for anybody. I was like, oh, hallelujah. I can do whatever I want.
Wow.
And whatever I want meant I can eat whatever I want because there had been, many, many years of constant back and forth judgment. Did you eat? Didn't you just eat? Shouldn't you eat? Are you eating again? You need to eat. Don't eat that much. Should you be eating that? From all sides, right? And so it really was one of these things where I can now do whatever I want. And so I did. And as you can probably imagine, that led to some outcomes that weren't super awesome. So as I now go off to Hawaii to live my best life, I am 55 pounds heavier than October 18th, 1989. An unrecognizable version of myself.
How long did you gain the weight? How long did it take gain 55 pounds?
About a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't go half-ass. I mean,
You fool.
I go. I don't mess around. And all along the way, I was like, oh, this is just a phase. I deserve it, right? I earned this. And I figured I'll just, it'll sort itself out. I'll get over it. I'll work it out. And clearly it wasn't, right? Clearly there was something else going on. So when I get to Hawaii and I'm realizing like, this is not how I envisioned my start of living my next phase of life. And yet here I am, and you want to be fitting in, the college girl, do all the things. And what do? You go out, you drink, you eat, you do all the things. You're the fun girl, except you're not. And so I finally had a good old conversation with myself and thought, you probably really need to sort this out because it's not going to just magically clear itself up and get better. Well, so then what do? You go on a diet. And that really started my first real effort at dieting and losing weight. And back then, the good old food pyramid told us that, eat grain all day, as much as you want. Don't eat fat, and you'll be just fine. And so I did. Yeah. I mean, I did what we were taught, and then clearly it still wasn't working. I was like, well, there must be something wrong with me. I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not doing it right. So after a few trips down that road, I thought, there's got to be something else going on here. And that's when I really decided to figure it out and truly dive into how to fuel a human body. And it isn't what we were taught at all, right?
Totally different.
And so now here I am in grad school, and I've lost some of that weight, but clearly still had a ways to go. And here I am, a personal trainer, and kind of a heavy one, but I'm fit, right? I'm fit and doing all the things. And I really credit Kathy for so many little seeds that she planted in my head. Even at that time, I didn't know they were being planted. But she's the first person I remember putting peanut butter in a smoothie. And I thought, I love peanut butter. I never thought about putting it in a smoothie. Well, protein and fat, right? We need some protein and fat along with all our fruit. So fast forward many, many years later, as I start really trying to educate people on all this and, obviously learning myself and educating myself on all of this, I realized that steady blood sugar is the key to your life. Steady blood sugar, that's it. You keep your blood sugar steady, almost everything else is going to work out. And you keep your blood sugar steady by putting protein, fat, and fiber in your body every 2 to 4 hours. And you nourish yourself early and often, and then you stop nourishing yourself. And so I came up with a little phrase, PFF is your BFF. Wrote a book, The PFF is Your BFF Handbook, because I know so many people struggle with nutrition and they don't know what to eat. And yet, it's not that hard, but it is, because even people who think they're making healthy choices, while they might be high quality whole real foods, if you don't put them in your body in the right way with other things, it's not going to serve you well. And that's where people like, but I'm making all these good choices and I'm not seeing a result. And that's where I come and dash your hopes and dreams. And I'm like, well, you kind of are making good choices. However, there's all these other pieces to the puzzle that you're missing. And I understand we're never taught these things. How could you know? Yeah. Which is why I try to create a very simple way to help people figure out how to do this. Yeah, it's a lot of this. So there's a lot of these habits too develop from a very young age. Before we are even, we're 13, 14, 15, 16, right? Those ages, well, we don't have any idea. We just eat what's in front of us, right? Cereal or whatever. So, and then later on in life, we have the opportunity to kind of learn this stuff. Do you think it starts with the parents? 100%. Right? Oh, yeah. And I think my generation is maybe the last generation, so I'm a Gen Xer, probably the last generation that grew up mostly on real food. So I categorize real food, and I call it FLS, food-like substances. And I mean, we grew up mostly on real food, right? Every now and then we had some food-like substances, right?
Meats.
Yeah, we had a
Brussels
garden,
sprouts.
right? And even my friends who didn't have gardens, they still ate like real food that you could find outside. And I think generations after us, again, with dual income families and everybody's busy and everybody's here, there, and everywhere, and the explosion of the fast food industry, that also happened in the mid-'80s, right? So all of these things changed all at once. And I think now generations are mostly eating food-like substances. And very likely even they're getting fed those in the womb. Because maybe as, good a choices as a mom might try to make when she's pregnant, there's so much in our food supply that you don't even know you're aware of eating. And there's still a lot of convenience eating going on, which is going to be things that really aren't offering high quality nutrients. And then we run into that trap of, but we're busy and we don't have time. And so now we're door dashing, we're Uber eating, we're going fast food, we're buying all these packaged things that are mostly not real food.
Yeah, and that contributes to our sadness and our happiness. Like it just like 1, 2 X's and O's, like a computer, 1 and 0, like happy, sad. Like the lower energy food you consume, the lower energy you're going to output. So a lot of people are like, man, I'm tired today, or I'm exhausted. Like when Tripp and I are doing business, we're never tired when we're engaged and we're excited and we're talking, we're right. But like I see a lot of people, they get in that loop, DoorDash, and it's crazy how much money people spend on what's the number?
Do you remember I told you about my roommate from last year? How much he spent on DoorDash?
Wasn't it like over $10,000?
Over $10,000
in 1 year.
In 1 year
on
for
DoorDash.
DoorDash alone.
Well, that's probably average for a lot of people out there, I bet.
That is bananas.
Crazy.
I can't even imagine that.
You're talking at least $1,500 a month on that, right?
Well, and I know a lot, and I will never judge a parent on their parenting.
For sure.
I know a lot of parents give their kids just DoorDash your dinner, just DoorDash your lunch.
Yeah.
And I live by East High School, and I see these kids walking back and forth with their $7 Starbucks drinks. Yeah. Number one, how can you afford that? Number two, and yet this is the norm.
Yeah.
And it is a little frightening because while we've had these as fully formed humans, right?
Yeah.
That's when maybe we started eating those things. This generation is eating them from the time they come out of the womb, and sometimes when they're still in the womb.
Yeah. I actually can't stand. It's a longer process to make food healthy, right? You have to source it better. You have to grow it in better regions. Like you shouldn't have certain fruits in certain seasons, right? Like those are just normal things. But I think one of the things I don't like is I don't like we have to have it. Like we have to have it now, right? We want it now. We want to lose the weight now. We always want things short.
Well, I'll say that also isn't the way I grew up. That didn't exist when I was growing up. This instant result thing did not exist. It started with the advent of the microwave and the dot-com era, right? We could have hot food instantly with no effort. We can be millionaires instantly with barely no effort.
Yep.
And then Google, right? We can have answers to everything with no effort.
Yep.
Well, then it's getting worse now. We had COVID, and then Amazon blew up because we could order anything from a canoe to food.
Yeah.
And
have it at your door the next day.
Yeah.
Well, less than 2 hours sometimes.
I just ordered something. It came 2 hours later. The girl was. I'm like, geez.
And so we are conditioned now to expect that is how everything works, and that's why the quick fix diets, right? All this quick result, but I can have that result, right? But what is going to be the long-term consequence of that quick result?
Well, even the internet. Remember how long it used to take to get on the internet back in the 90s? You have your mom.
No. I had to sign up to be in the computer lab to get on the internet. So talk about waiting a long time to get on the internet. Yeah, that's my era.
Well, then you're trying to get on. You have mom down the stairs. Get off the phone. I'm trying to call someone. Or get off the internet. I'm trying to call someone.
There was a sidetrack real quick. There was a thing called internet terminals. I don't know if you remember, for 6 months, and then you never heard of it again. It was before this, it was like, you're at the airport and you want to get online, internet terminals, the next $1 billion industry. And it was like this arcade game that you could go and like swipe your credit card and then you could get on the internet.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing, we do have amazing conveniences these days that do afford us to do really incredible things. Mm-hmm. And they often come at some expense to our physical, mental, and emotional health.
For sure. Yeah. That's kind of like, I think that's like the route that it always comes back to. All these conversations we've had all, I don't know how many guests, but we've always kind of come down to this nucleus of this idea of like what the human, and this is a little too deep for the podcast, I apologize, but this is like what the human being is at essence. Who are we and what are we? Not who am I, but who are we? Like, what are we supposed to be? And we can start that conversation by saying what we're not supposed to be. Right? We're not supposed to be ingesting fake ingredients. We're not supposed to be adding these new chemicals to our foods to make our bodies better. Like, I think there are some people that feel like, oh, your blood sugar is high. Guess what? We have a lab down the road that has invented this new molecule that actually lowers blood sugar. That's the way there's certain people that think about this. And it's like, but if I exercised, wouldn't it lower the blood sugar? It's like, oh, well, you could do that.
Well, and to your point, we're not supposed to be stationary, right? Humans were designed to move and to do all different kinds of movements all throughout the day. Most people are stationary most of the day.
Yes. I mean, God, let's go down. So kinesiology, some people know what that is. For people who don't, tell them what kinesiology is.
So it's basically the study of human movement, right? And a human would prefer to get through life in a straight line, right? Ears, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. That is how a human biomechanically would like to be positioned more often than not. And you look at all the body positions, even look at us, right? None of us are in a straight line right now. I do this very rarely. More often than not, I'm standing. I try to stand with good posture. That is one thing I'm super grateful that gymnastics instilled in me.
For sure.
But, the nature of people's jobs or their activities, or they're too tired to do anything, so they're slumped over on the couch doing nothing, staring at a screen, which we also weren't designed to do, stare at a screen all day, right? I mean, we're doing all these things that a human was not designed for, which is why it's really no shock that we have a whole bunch of physical, mental, and emotional health issues, and yet people are just shocked that there's something not quite right. I'm like, well, it really makes total sense.
It does. It makes total sense. Yeah, look it up if you're not familiar. Some of you who are in the fitness industry have heard the term kinesiology, or maybe in passing, or you already know what it is. But if you don't, go look it up. It's every personal trainer's number one best friend in understanding. Hey, what movements are our bodies supposed to do? I was just describing to a client of mine the other day. Who's like, my shoulder hurts. And I go, tell me what shoulder movements you're doing. And one gym had her progressive overloading. You can't see me on the podcast. Progressive overloading, straight armed front raises. And I said, okay, that's fine. If you want to start to develop your front delt, great. Okay. But our bodies were not meant to progressively overload a straight armed front shoulder raise. It just doesn't make sense. At what point in our day do we overload our shoulder? So, when you look at kinesiology, and personal trainers like yourself are like, oh, that makes sense. So while somebody's looking at you training somebody, they may say like, oh, you're just counting reps. You're not counting reps. You're organizing a complete program, right? And you're progressing it. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work.
In fact, one of the things, I had a friend that we were both in grad school together and both trainers at this gym. And we knew people watch us all the time, and they don't want to pay for us, but they'll watch what we're doing with other people, and then they'll copy it.
Notebook.
I love that.
Right. So we were so bad. We decided we're just going to do some total nonsense thing and see who starts doing it. So we had a couple of clients each who were on board with that, and I'm telling you, they had no idea why we were doing it. They're like, oh, they're doing that. I guess I should do that. So it's interesting, right? Again, like maybe we should really figure out what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then do it right.
Yes.
But I get it. Like you're afraid or you don't want to invest the time or the money, and that's a whole other conversation. But I think just understanding how a human operates, not just biomechanically, but physiologically as well, right? We weren't designed to sit. Mm-hmm. So not only biomechanically is that horrible, but physiologically it's horrible. I know you've all heard sitting is the new smoking.
Sure.
Okay, that has been being said for 20 years. It's not new, but we keep saying, somebody just said it to me the other day, oh, I just read sitting is the new smoking. And I'm like, you just read that?
Was that from a Muscle and Fitness magazine?
I'm telling you, everybody thinks they're reinventing the wheel. I tell you, I'm seeing this stuff, I'm like, we know so much. And everyone comes up with the new that.
I read this online. And then you have to explain to them, oh my God.
Well, sitting's an interesting thing because if you look at it and you sit down and let's say you're having a conversation like us, we're all sitting around a table, we're, engaged in a conversation and we're aware of our muscles. And I don't know, maybe you maintain it for 15, 20 minutes. And then what happens your body says a signal. It goes, hey, I'm relaxing, right? If I'm not engaged in conversation. And so what happens is I start my shoulders slump forward. I put pressure on my lower back. Now, picture what that's doing to somebody who's doing that for 8 hours a day. So is sitting the new smoke? Sitting is 100%. If you want posture problems, sit all day.
One of my most horrifying experiences as a child was in third grade. As a Z, last name Zellner, we sit alphabetically, and I'm last in the row back in the corner. And we're watching a movie, so all the lights are out, it's dark. And my teacher turns the lights on and says, everybody turn around and look at Michelle.
Oh my God.
Right? Well, Michelle, being the gymnast, was sitting up perfectly straight. Right? Everybody else is slumped over and hunched over and slouched. And I mean, right? Like, nice that I have good posture, but please don't ever do that.
Everybody look at Michelle.
Yeah.
We could probably talk for, I think, 3 or 4 hours on this because there's so many topics to go down these rabbit holes from now the posture to the training to the...
We're just going to have her back on.
To the mental health, to the physiology. This is just such a good conversation. Now, fast forwarding it to today, and obviously you have a wealth of knowledge, you're speaking, you have events going on. Can people reach out to you? Are they able to stay connected to you if they have questions on this podcast? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, definitely. My website is the best way to get me, betterbeings.net. So as wellness evolved and I evolved, it really did transform more into the education piece. I would do a lot of on-site biometric screenings way back in the day when they did those at companies. And I would often do like the coaching. And in 3 minutes, I get to coach you on your results. And but it really sparked my curiosity to help people understand not just that your blood pressure is high and that you should exercise, but how exercise is actually going to help lower it, or how exercise or your nutrition is going to help bring that hemoglobin A1C into a healthy range. And so it got me to really get more into the education and informational side of helping people understand their bodies and how every choice we make impacts our bodies. So that led into the corporate lunch and learns and corporate wellness and public speaking conferences. Of course, I have my own podcast and blog, so you can find everything at my website.
That's awesome. And again, to reiterate, it's betterbeings.net. Michell Zellner. Hit her up. She's got a great website. You'll find all the information on there, even companies and much else. Trip, what do you got for us?
Just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me on LinkedIn, making this connection, and coming here on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are doing some fascinating stuff, and I'm excited to have this connection.
Yes. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's make waves in the industry. Let's change it. Let's do it together. You guys, thanks for joining this episode of Health or High Water. We hope you're doing great and you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next week.